I am going to be co-chairing this event with Sister Kathleen Williams, a Sacramento activist, a revolutionary whose love for the Rojas family has been long-standing, and her friendship, and it's an honor for her and for me to be here, to have been asked by Desiree to speak before you and to help present this wonderful program. You will hear from people from all walks who will share with you their experience, their love, their solidarity message from Al. On April 2nd, as some of you may know, the Mexican Chamber of Deputies, the equivalent of the House of Representatives, voted to support a resolution submitted by Deputy Gustavo Fernandez Noroña, who many of us, a deputy from Morena, who many of us brought to the Bay Area and then up to Sacramento. He presented a resolution for a moment of silence, a minute of silence, in honor, the Congress of Mexico, in honor of Al Rojas. And yes, that is Presente. That is a recognition. What an incredible honor. And the Speaker of the House explained in her words, I request a minute of silence to honor the memory of Al Rojas, a leader and fighter for the rights of migrant workers who passed away March 20th at the age of 83. This is the recognition of the Congress of Mexico for Brother Al. And I'd like to ask all of you to please rise as we honor and accompany on the screen the Congress of Mexico as the Speaker announces the minute of silence. So thank you so much.
It is my honor to introduce Pastor Pamela Anderson, the minister of Parkview Presbyterian Church. Her ministry is grounded in social justice, and she is an active member of the Poor People's Campaign.
Al Rojas was a good father and husband, and he belonged to the people. He would say to people, I love you. What do you need? How can I help you? He created extra family in his life. And my dear friends, you are his family. His life was a sermon about change and freedom and justice. He respected all religions. He saw justice work as religion. He did not like organized religion because he felt like there was too much hypocrisy, because he didn't hear enough sermons about change and freedom and justice. With organized religion, there was too much sitting in the pews and not taking to the streets. Not enough people taking a stand outside their circles. Collaboration and unity, now that was godly. He saw God through organizing and giving people hope. He made it clear that it's not about me, it's about us, and that we need to think collectively. Al Rojas did not have one particular religion. If something from any faith spoke to him, he leaned into that. He believed that God is much bigger than our concept. For instance, he believed in Jesus as a good man, but he also believed in Jesus as the revolutionary, as the humanitarian, as the environmentalist, as the civil rights activist. Jesus was a political person. Right, amen, we got some church going on here. He had respect for Jesus, but more than that, he had respect for all religions that honored the principles of humanity. Blessed are the peacemakers because they are organizers of the Creator, right? He believed that we are servants of a higher power, and it is our duty to support people and give them hope. Al Rojas took bits and pieces of religion that worked for him. His philosophy was, if it makes you a better human being, then I am fine with that, right? Amen, amen. As I mentioned before, Al loved the fusion movement of clergy, and he especially loved working with Father Jack O'Malley, who's, right? And he passed away 6 months ago, so imagine the reunion they're having together, right? Father Jack O'Malley, he loved him because he was part of the boycott, the great boycott for farmers' rights. Religious communities come together and take action, whether it be for human rights, animal rights, LGBTQIA rights, water rights, farm worker rights. As long as it built unity, squashed bigotry, Al was all for it. He loved organizing with Father O'Malley, and he felt God in the fusion movement of clergy, and he felt God in the social justice movement. He felt God in the United Farm Workers movement. He felt God in the civil rights movement. He felt God whenever anybody took a stand for the least, the last, the lost, and the left out. Because as we say in the Poor People's Campaign, when we lift from the bottom, everybody wins. Because everybody has got a right to live. So I know that you all thought that you were coming here for a funeral, but actually you've come here for recruitment. Because Al would want the work to continue on. So what I want to do here is to bless you all as you now go from here. So I know that we can't be next to each other and everything, but I'm just going to point to different parts of myself, and I'd like for you to do the same. So my dear siblings, the world is too beautiful and too dangerous for anything but love, yes? So I bless your eyes that you may see God in everyone. I bless your ears that you may hear the cry of the poor. I bless your mouths that you may speak truth and love. And I bless your hands, that everything you give and receive is a sacrament. And I bless your feet, that you may run to those who need you. And I bless your hearts, and may your hearts be so open and so set on fire that your love changes everything. Amen. Viva Al Rojas!
Thank you so much, Pastor Pamela. On March 25th, the Rojas family sent an open letter to Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador to inform him, of course, of Al's passing, and to make some requests. It was an organizing letter. Al is somebody who knew Andrés Manuel. They had fought the battle for opening democracy in Mexico going back to the early 80s with Cuauhtémoc Cárdenas, fighting for workers' rights along with the Electrical Workers Union, and always fighting for farm workers. That was his life, that's who he was. Desiree pointed out, he knew who he was. He was a farm worker, his father was a farm worker, his father and mother, his family, their families, and going back generation and generation in Michoacán, in Chihuahua, and so many other states across Mexico. The open letter, which was reprinted almost in full in the April 4th issue of the daily newspaper La Jornada in Mexico, reviewed many of the struggles in defense of workers' rights on both sides of the border, and concluded by asking President López Obrador, and I quote, "We believe that one of the best ways to honor the memory of Al Rojas is for your administration, Mr. President, to support the San Quintin families in their right and in their struggle for trade union, their true trade union of their choice." On April 9th, In his early morning press conference, President Lopez Obrador acknowledged the open letter from the Rojas family, explaining that he was delayed and should have answered it sooner, which is an interesting point. And it was very poignant. It was a message of condolence, and he sends a big abrazo to the family and friends, to all of you gathered here to honor and pay tribute to Al Rojas. I knew Al Rojas, the Mexican president stated, and I can vouch for the fact that over many years he gave his life, he devoted his life to defend Mexicans and migrants in general. We will now run that segment of his press conference of April 9th for you on the big screen.
En nombre de el pueblo y del gobierno de México. Y también porque se fue pasando el tiempo y no lo había hecho, mi más profundo pésame a Al Rojas, un dirigente de migrantes de Sacramento, California. Al Rojas era un líder, defensor de migrantes, ayudaba mucho a los mexicanos y a todos los migrantes. Lo conocí y me consta que desde hace muchos años se dedicó a eso, entregó su vida a eso. Entonces, un abrazo a familiares y a los amigos de Al Rojas, que siempre lo vamos a estar recordando. Ahora sí, empezamos, si les parece, con Rojas.
I remember Desiree, who asked, do you think it'd be possible to get recognition? There has to be a way to get recognition for my father by the government and the people in Mexico. I think there's no higher recognition than what we just saw. And it's a recognition of a life of tribute, of struggle, not always agreement. You have to understand, when it came to the free trade policies, which Andrés Manuel had initially opposed and then accepted, Al was in his face, like he always was if there was injustice or if there was something that he felt needed to be addressed, respectfully. But Mr. President, these trade agreements, NAFTA, CAFTA, these are corporate trade agreements, he said. They're destroying the economies, they're destroying the indigenous communities, forcing people to flee. You all know that one of the big campaigns that he waged was for the right not to migrate, el derecho a no emigrar. And that was a right because people's communities were being shattered by war and especially by these trade agreements that made it impossible for communities to survive economically and forcing people to go up to the border in Baja California. That's where the Triquis, a huge number of indigenous peoples from Oaxaca, trying to find a better way, found their jobs in the Valle de San Quintin, or tried to get across into the United States only to be returned or imprisoned, incarcerated by ICE. We were marching, and just now, and one of the slogans was "Killer ICE." That is so true. That is so true, and so many of us here have been known or been victimized by the policies of the Migrant. Al did not receive the accolades of some others who have named streets after them. He should have, but he was so uncompromising, correctly so in my view. I was so honored to have worked with him. He was so uncompromising to speak truth to power wherever and whoever that power had to be or was at the time. That's right. In honoring Al, we are honoring a revolutionary. He was somebody who said, we're not going to accept the status quo. He stood for justice and would not compromise on that, and that's the legacy, that's the brother, the compañero, that's the Al Rojas that we love, that we honor, and that we make a commitment that we are going to follow in the footsteps, and we're not going to stop until justice is served, because that is the legacy, that is what he wants us to do, and that is not negotiable. So thank you very much. Que viva Rojas! Que viva Rojas! Que viva Rojas! I would like now to welcome to the stage the Honorable Kevin McCarty, State Assemblyman from Sacramento. Do we know if Assemblyman McCarty is here with us? Not yet. Okay, so what if there's agreement? I am sorry. Before Honorable Kevin McCarty, we had and we have really a wonderful memorial film to watch. And you'll bear with me, I wrote down the name of the wonderful filmmaker, Andres Garcia. So Andres, will Andres please come up and introduce the film? And please, my apologies for inadvertently scheduling you later.
Al Rojas was a role model for many of us, and someone that we will continue to look up to guard our path to peace and love, and what he stood for and what he stands for all of us is greater than just his being here. We will carry his spirit, his determination to bring justice to those who don't always get the best luck with being supported, and we're going to support each other. And Al Rojas, viva Al Rojas!
guarantee me that I'll sell a box of grapes and so I can make a profit and pay you $2 an hour, we make a deal. $3 an hour, $5 an hour. I don't care where you are, but you guarantee me enough when I sell a box of grapes that I can pay you that much.
Do you want to live in this state? I wouldn't live here. You know, you're being very impudent. Well, I want to live here. This is, I call it, an impudent question.
Y a partir de este momento es prohibido llorarnos.
You come and look at my bank account. You probably got more money in the bank than I have right now. Well, I'm doing it all.
Vamos, cumpa, carajo, que para amanecer no hacen falta gallinas sino cantar gallos. Ellos no serán bandera para abrazarnos con ella, y el que no la pueda alzar y abandone la pelea, no es tiempo de recular ni de vivir ni de ir. Canta, canta, compañero, que tu voz sea disparo, que con las manos del pueblo no habrá canto desarmado. Canta, canta, compañero, canta, canta, compañero, canta, canta, compañero, que no calle tu canción. Si te falta bastimento, tienes ese corazón que tiene latir de bombo, color de vino ancestral. Viene tu cueca de lucha cabalgando un viento austral. Canta, canta, compañero, canta, canta, compañero. Canta, canta, compañero, que no calle tu canción. Si te falta bastimento, tienes ese corazón. Canta, canta, compañero, canta, canta, compañero.
Tú eres la triste raíz de mis ojos, que easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm crazy, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be
Andrés García, mil gracias de todo corazón. Creo en nombre de todos, por favor, un gran aplauso y agradecimiento. Andrés, you captured the vitality, the love, the heart, the smile, the confidence in the struggle that we will prevail. Thank you, Andrés, so much. Our next speaker is somebody who everybody knows. I am so honored to be able to bring to you a daughter, a comrade, a fighter of Al's, his daughter, Desiree Rojas.
I want to say thank you to everyone for being here. Nuestro pueblo, ¿sí? Somos un pueblo que sí? The first time I stood at this park, I was about 6 years old, and my mother and father were here, and as kids with them, and at their side, we were passing out flyers on the tomato strike in Yolo County. How many of you remember that? And I was tired and hungry and whining, but when we got home, my mom cooked for us at our little apartment, our farm worker housing apartment in Yolo, California, and we talked about this day here at this park. We talked about the Chicanos who painted this mural, Jose Montoya, Juanishi Orozco, and many others, and the bands that were live on this stage who we are related to. we talked about how beautiful this park was and how meaningful it was. And years later, my dad would buy a home on 19th and T Street, and that would be our home for his children and his family. When my father's work with the United Farm Workers Movement came to an end, as you know, he and my mother at his side, and my family, we took the Great Boycott to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where we met amazing and beautiful people who were kind and very giving, who had empathy for farm workers. And our family, the Trachtenbergs, are here with us today, and they're going to get up and speak. But there was a huge community in Pittsburgh that loved us. Not only was it the Jewish community, the Black community, the Catholic community that helped us survive through that boycott, but we came to tell many stories about the people we came into contact with and the people that were so loving that today are our friends. Many friends who have crossed over and many friends who still walk with us. But after the Great Boycott and after the huelga and after my family left the United Farm Workers Union, there was a political evolution that was happening inside of my father. He needed answers. He needed to understand why so much of our raza was being enslaved. What was the real root reason behind that? So he went into Mexico. And in Mexico for 40 years he organized and he connected with amazing people, campesinos, artists, musicians, revolutionaries, activists, students, Guatemaltecans. Today's President, Manuel López Obrador, who is the president today, who acknowledged him today. But he planted seeds in Mexico that today gave him this kind of honor. But my father was never organizing for honor. He was organizing for justice. He was organizing for humanity. He was organizing to create organizers so they could create organizers so that the future could win. Because in this lucha, inside of revolutions or movimientos, we don't win. We carve the road and we pave the path so that the future can win. And that's who he was. And if there was anything that my father believed in, he believed that there was an organizer in every human being in their pueblo. He touched many lives. He touched many hearts. And there were many people who fell in love with him in Mexico. Many who call him Papa or Maestro or Señor Rojas. Well, we could be in Mexico and it doesn't matter where we go, people are walking up to him and saying, Señor, ¿eres tú, Señor Rojas? Sí, soy yo. El chiquito, el hombre with the hat. De Michoacán. My father was an absolute institution of knowledge, labor history, and wisdom, and he carried that with him everywhere he went and he walked. He believed 100% before you can name labels on things like phobias, all these phobias, these forms of racism, before you can name them with like Islamophobia or whatever, my father was already shattering those injustices years before these terms came out. In this community, he fought for justice against police brutality. He fought in the sides and for justice in the Black people's movement, the Native people's movement, the original people's movement, those without a voice. And he never, ever expected anything in return. If I could say anything about my father, he was a servant to his pueblo, and he was a servant in the movimiento, and he was a servant to farm workers, and he was a servant to the people. On your chair, there's a program. This program, in collaboration with a very beautiful, beautiful human being, Bridget Rex, for 3 weeks, helped me put this program together. That is a small picture, but a large, helpful thought, a picture to his life, of his universe. And the film footage you saw earlier by Andres Garcia, thank you. The film footage when we were at the Dos Californias Marcha in down south in Tijuana, I took that footage of my father walking up to the wall of shame that we call, the border that fell on our people. And I knew that when I saw the faces of the San Quintin farm workers, the San Quintin on the other side of that wall of shame, gravitating to him, I knew that my father, he belonged to the people, he belonged to the universe, he belonged to anybody who would be willing to listen, and he would give them so much hope. I knew he was a beautiful human being, an absolute pillar, and not only in his family's lives, but in the pueblos and in the farm workers of San Quintin and so many people of Mexico. In this program, there is a beautiful story about him, and there are beautiful pictures, like the picture that was taken by Rodolfo Valtierra de Mexico City, where he's sitting in Mexico, this famous picture. But I'd like for you to turn to a page, if you have this pamphlet in remembrance of our father and his loved ones and his comrades, that we share these lovely photos. You see, our father, was devastated when he lost his comrades who crossed over before him. And he would say how much he loved being at their side, and how much he learned profound things from each of these community leaders and activists. And there's an individual, many people on this page who he loved a lot, like Allie and Mitzi Trachtenberg, like Larry Itliong, who his son Johnny Itliong is here, like Bob Fitch, the famous civil rights photographer who captured Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and not only the UFW movement, but lived in our house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to capture the history of the great boycott there. Alex Garza and Father Jack O'Malley, who was also on the boycott in Pittsburgh. Peter Lorries, Chuy Ocelot, Jesse Ortiz, and recently, a devastating blow to us and to him is Dean Murakami with Los Rios College Federation of Teachers. Can we give it up for Dean, please? Dean Murakami was such a giant in our community, who not only talked about and educated people about ending the privatization of public education, but he was our brother and our comrade, and my dad loved him very much. This page is very important because some of the children of his comrades are here, like the Trachtenberg family and Johnny, and Alex Garza's kids, who I believe are here as well, and Dean Murakami's family. He believed that we were a pueblo. He believed in sharing the platform. He believed that it wasn't just about me, it was about we. How many of you guys heard that from him? He said, it's not about me, it's about we, Desiree. It's about our pueblo, it's about others. My father devoted his whole life to serving his pueblo in the movimiento. And on November 11, 2011, he was blessed with a kidney transplant. He was given to us for an extra 12 years of his life. And with those 12 years, rather than staying in his backyard and doing simple things, he decided to enjoy his family, his children, and his grandchildren, but to keep organizing. To keep organizing for justice and humanity. To take a stand against the wars on the other side of the world and the neoliberal agendas and policies that affect so many people in the world. My father believed, he believed that in unity, by building a bridge between unions in this state and in this country and in Mexico, would one day create power for the workers and rank and file workers in their unions, because it's international, trinational corporations that are attacking unions and workers. And as long as we could build those bridges, we could actually make a difference and save people's lives. He devoted over 40 years of his life to do that. And in doing that, Mexico today, unions in Mexico like the electricians, the teachers of Oaxaca, the farm workers of San Quintin, many unions respect and acknowledge my father for being so instrumental in their lives with collaborating. Well, today these bridges are stronger than ever before. And in the program later, soon, you're going to hear from his comrades of San Quintin and the Tijuana and the DF that are going to speak about our father and how amazing he was and how he will continue to be amazing through his legacy, through you. Because we have to keep moving forward. We have to keep organizing. Like he said, we're planting the seeds and paving the way so that the future can win. Because I stand on someone's shoulders, like you stand on someone's shoulders, and like they will too. But we don't get justice and we do not win the battles and the fights until we plant those seeds. Today was made possible by our family unions. I can't thank LCLAA Local 1000 enough. I cannot thank Los Rios College Federation of Teachers enough. I cannot thank the Sacramento Central Labor Council enough. Or California Progressive Alliance. Local LCLAA Local 1021. Unite Here, Local 49, SCIU 2015, all the brown berets who came from afar. I can't thank enough also of the American Postal Union also. And el Sindicato de Alianza de México también. And so many other people who contributed to this day. I can't thank you enough for your blessings and for being here with us today. In the back of the book, there's pages with our thank you list. Please look at this list, because it took all these people to make this day happen. Los danzantes, todos, the artists and the musicians, everybody who came together, and most of all my familia that came as far as out of state, from Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Oklahoma, I think Kentucky, all Oxnard, Missouri. And I also want to acknowledge my Tia Gloria. I don't know if she's here. My Tia Gloria was on the Great Boycott with us in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and her son too was also born on the Great Boycott, Kevin Lopez Donovan. But I can't leave this stage. I I cannot leave this stage without thanking a particular cousin of mine. Monico Riveles. He made our father's casket. The work and the love that he put into making this casket is a dream of love. It's so beautiful. He made it with all of his heart. And we have been getting compliments from so many people, but a very important person said in this line of work, I've never seen anything like this in the 40 years that I've been doing this. Monico, thank you very much, mijo. Where are you? I want to acknowledge our LCLAA San Diego chapter president, Carlos Pelayo. Please raise your hand. Please welcome him. He came from San Diego. He's a part of our LCLAA chapters. And I think it's time for me to move on. It brings me a great honor because he knew what it was like to live on the boycott, and he knew what it meant to earn $5 a week and to live off of donated food, clothing, and housing like our family did. While my parents were head organizers for the United Farm Workers Union, who they helped co-found. Not only did he understand the suffering as a child, but he also understood, and he very, very much so, how those who are not in agreement politically with some can be ostracized, not recognized, and how painful that is. But we know the truth because there are so many witnesses in the movimiento that were there at our side, that marched with us, sang with us, cried with us, and who know the true stories of La Huelga. It brings me great honor to introduce to you and to also acknowledge our brother, a part of our family. Our fathers were good friends. The son of Larry Itliong, Johnny Itliong. Larry Itliong was the leader of the Filipino farm worker movement of AWAC. And he's here with us, marching with us at our side, together. The Itliong's and the Rojas family today, give it up! I believe right now that our fathers right now are very proud and very happy to see this moment. Please give it up for Johnny, please. Itliong.
This is a very sad day for me, in my heart. But I'm here to honor El. I call him El as an adult, but as a child, born in 1965, the year of the Delano Grave Strike, I called him Tio. He was my Tio. He was a good man. He was my father's friend. Being little, looking up to these guys, these men of stone, looking at their hands, feeling their hands always rough with work, rough with power, physical power, mental power, to be able to stand up to the greatest industry, the largest industry in the United States, here in California, an industry that equals the GDP of Russia, huge country Russia. California, which feeds the United States and many other countries. I'm so honored to be here, to be part of the family, to bring my family into this, my kids to see what it was like to march. I bring something with me many of you maybe have seen, but this flag here, it's probably the oldest flag here. This flag is an original. This was carried during the strikes. If you look at its hand sewn, this flag really represents my father Larry and Elle. Their work and many others coming together to create something to make better lives for people who are invisible, people who other people didn't care about. All they cared about is how they got their food on the table. They didn't care about where it came from. All the hard work, the struggle, the pain. I remember as a child, me, my father, my brother, my father taking us to the Filipinos back then were called the Manongs. And they were brought here during the 1900s and on to be the next group to be exploited for cheap labor. And many of them, there were laws, not many, but there were laws that were written specifically against Filipinos. Could not vote, of course, couldn't buy property, of course. You couldn't marry, and you couldn't bring their wives to the United States. So they were alone. They were alone here, and many of them died alone. And many times we would go to funerals, and it would just be my father and my brother. As years went, because the Manongs were much older. But to see all the faces here, all the love for my deal, brings joy to my heart. And to be an adult and to fight for my father to get the recognition that he deserves. And of course, Elle always supported me, always stood up when people questioned and say, hey, you know what? He's right. And what that history is, on September 7th, 1965, at the Filipino Hall in Delano, the AWOC, Agricultural Workers Organization Committee, as we saw on the movie, voted to strike. And it was my father's organization that started that. And soon after, 2 weeks later, my dad knew he couldn't do it alone. And so he went to seek out Cesar Chavez. And he asked Chavez to join the strike. And this is a history that has been twisted to benefit the UFW, or the Chavez legacy. Cesar also was my uncle. But he did not treat Elle right. He did not treat my father right. You know, the inside baseball of politics in groups. And unfortunately, he forced Elle out, and then not too long after that, my father left. But they were really good friends. They knew what they were going through. They supported each other, even afterwards. And to be a grown-up and to step up for my father and say, hey, you know what, this isn't right. You're telling the wrong history. You're lying to people. You need to tell who's there, who started it, who was there in the beginning. And it's just not fair. And what do you do when things aren't fair? You step up with your voice, okay? You bring more people into the fold. You stand together and you say something and you do something. And that's what I did. I've been doing that for over 30 years. And Al has been there the whole time for me. And now here in California, we have a day to recognize my father. And if my father was alive, he would be so pissed off at me because that's not what he wanted. He was never about who he was. It was always about helping others. Just like the only reason why my father got this is me stepping up and saying it. And I've been saying also the other Manongs, the other leaders like El, Gilbert Padilla. You know, there's always, you know, the politics are there, but you know what? These were the men who stood up, who made the example. And these are the men that people need to read the history and knowledge to know who we should be and who we are. And we are people, and we deserve to be treated like human beings. I'm gonna miss Al. Al was one of the closest things to my father. That's why I held him very dear. Thank you for giving me the time. Thank you. And thank you for honoring me and my family.
¡Sí se puede!
¡Sí se puede!
I can't hear you. ¡Sí se puede! Thank you, Brother Johnny. Give it up for Johnny Itliong. Aquí estamos y no nos vamos. Our next speaker is a good friend of mine. Not only is she a good friend of mine, but she is also the president of SEIU Local 1000. And if it wasn't for this union, we could not have made a lot of this possible. She's dynamite, she's amazing, muy fuerte, and she has been a long time union organizer, activist in the movimiento for I think over 20 or 30 years. And it brings me great joy to be able to introduce her. And I love her dress. Everyone give it up, please, for Yvonne Walker, president of SEIU Local 1000.
Hi, how's everybody doing? Thank you, Desiree. That was really sweet, though. I now, as I get older, I kind of cringe when people say you've been doing it for 20, 30 years, because that says, you know, like you've been around for a minute. So I'm going to be very brief. First off, I want to honor the family. Deborah, Desiree, Albert Jr., Shalom, because I don't think we all fully appreciate. For us, Al was this magnificent, bigger-than-life man. And for them, he was somebody that they had to share. He was never just their father. I would imagine that they had very few family meals where there wasn't extended family, that people that just came and they're in. And so I don't think that we fully appreciate the sacrifice that the family makes to have such a great man. So I just want to acknowledge you and thank you all for how you have shared your father with us. You know, it said that you shall know a tree by the fruit that it bears, right? And in Al, mighty oak. But he didn't just bear his 4 children. Look out in the crowd. He bore all of us, right? To make all of us organizers, fighters, fighting for the workers all the time. When I first met Al back in 1999 and I was new, had never done this stuff, and Al came up and is talking to me, and the first thing he's asking is like, well, who are you? Where are you from? I felt kind of familiar with it because black people will do that, right? They associate you with your family, so we want to know how you fit into this picture. And so I felt good. I felt like connected to Al, right? I became president. And then, you know, things were a little tough at first. And I was in my feelings. And I went to Al because, like, he had talked to me and he was nice and we were good. And I was probably maybe a little whiny, a little cryy. And Al had what I call now a courageous conversation with me. I like to think it was from love, right? Initially, it was a little tough to hear. One of the things that stuck with me was, oh, so you think you're supposed to be happy all the time? I was like, well, I did, but maybe I was wrong. Let me go back and think about that. After that courageous conversation, I hadn't seen Al for 6 months, and I will be honest with you, I was avoiding Al. I was avoiding Al. But then, we might have been even here, you know, at some March something. And Al came up to me and he said, sister, I haven't seen you in a while. And I was like, oh, well, Al, I thought you were mad at me. And he was like, for what? And so, you know, that was what let me know that one, Al is an elder and it is his job to make sure that we all stay on the right path. And he did that. And he did it with love. It was always about the people. It was always about lifting up workers and making sure that you're doing good in your heart. And I've always kept that with me and trying to hold true to that and kept that to be my North Star. Again, you shall know a tree by the fruit it should bear. And I just want to say this from my heart. One of the greatest gifts Al gave me was Desiree. She would call me and call me and call me, and I would not answer the phone. That's true. She would call me and I would not answer the phone. But I'll tell you what, she was always right on time, always called at the right moment, always knew when I needed her. She was a sister to me when I needed a sister, one of my biggest cheerleaders. And I will just say, I think that's one of the biggest gifts that your dad gave me, in addition to the sport that he's given me. So, at any rate, I love Al, I love all of you, and we got work to do, guys.
She said, I had told her, you know, some people say that they were mentored by my dad, and I asked him, well, how did you feel when he reprimanded you? He said, oh no, he never did that to me. If he didn't reprimand you and have a one-on-one, a hard conversation with you, you weren't mentored by my dad. Because I could tell you, we share stories about that. Thank you, Yvonne, very much. Thank you. Thank you from the Rojas family to you and to all the members of Local 1000. Gracias, y si se puede. Now, it's my time. family. Our family who has been with us since the great boycott of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Our family who is not only our godparents to our children, but my mother's children as well. Their parents were my Tia and Theo, Alan and Mitzi Trachtenberg, and the Trachtenberg family from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, joined the great boycott and were organizers in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My Tia Gloria was there. She saw it, and they're here today to give a palabra, to share a testimony about the love of our families and this beautiful, beautiful fabric of love, of a relationship that we have carried for over, see how old am I? 50 years! Get up here, you guys, come on! Give it up for our familia, the Trachtenbergs!
Where's Al?
In all of us.
I think what Yvonne said really hit me about the sacrifice of the families. When you have parents like Albert, like Larry, like Elena, there's a lot that is not public, but very deep. In 1968, Caesar did a very smart thing. He chose Albert Rojas to go to Pittsburgh and to organize the boycott of grapes. Our family had long been involved in civil rights issues in Pittsburgh, really relating to late Jim Crow and desegregating the South and social justice for Black people, so they corralled their activist friends into our living room, and Albert and Elena came with Debbie, Shalom, and Albert. No, not Shalom. Elena was pregnant with Shalom. And in our packed living room, what I remember, I was 12 years old, Albert said, "I've never been in the home of white people before." And we did not understand that because we were in a world of Black people and white people. We didn't know anything about brown people or Mexican Americans or Chicanos. And along with introducing the boycott, he brought the reality of farm workers and the people that did this backbreaking work into the consciousness of people in the East Coast. And he and Elena very quickly galvanized an amazing constellation of union people, priests, rabbis, housewives, businessmen, to come together and work really hard with them to have one of the most successful boycotts in the country. One of the ingenious actions that I remember as a near teenager is going into supermarkets who'd been pressured to stop carrying scab grapes. And Albert instructed us to fill the shopping carts to the brim with frozen food and then ask for the manager and say, "What? You have grapes that are not union grapes? We can't shop here. We need to talk to the manager and make sure that you no longer sell these scab grapes." And then everybody would abandon their filled shopping carts. And in the weeks following, there'd be lots of picketing, and eventually they were pressured to carry only UFW grapes. Many strategies developed over those years, and really Albert and Elena were absolutely new to all of this, and something about them was recognized. I mean, we have to give somebody at the UFW credit for recognizing that they had it in them. So I have a lot to say, but there's others behind me. It's been such an honor to know all of them, to host them, to share with them, to come together for the whole range of family celebrations. And I loved Al, and I'll always love all of them. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David. I'm a little brother, and Amy touched on the kind of creation story of the Rojas Trachtenberg tribe, which has been a tribe for 53 years now, since he arrived in Pittsburgh in our living room. And for those of us who over many, many years have heard this story, there's a kind of aspect of destiny about it. There was somehow some sense that our father, Alan, and Albert were destined to come together and to bring our families together, and that there weren't two men who were more like two brothers than those two men. And in that respect, I'm very proud to say that Albert's my Tio also. Albert liked to tell a lot of stories, and one of the stories he liked to tell was how he'd be out with Alan, and he said to Alan had these strange words that he hadn't heard before. Like, he'd say, "That guy's a schmuck," you know, and Albert said, "Al, what's a schmuck?" And Albert said, "A schmuck is a jerk, it's an a-hole." And Albert said, "Oh, I mean like a pendejo." And Alan said, "What's a pendejo?" And he said, "It's like a jerk or a-hole." So, but another word that Albert learned was mensch. And mensch is Yiddish and it simply means man, but it goes much deeper than that. A mensch in Yiddish it's a real human being. It's a person who cares for other people, who's competent, who's got commitment, who takes care of things. And that's what Albert was. He was a mensch. And, you know, for most of us, what we're interested in life is being comfortable, being safe, having a few nice things. But Albert stood for something more than that. I mean, he stood for justice, he stood for fairness, he wanted his people to have a better life. And he devoted his life to that. And he didn't do it for a weekend, he didn't do it for a week, it's his whole life. And Elena also, and Desiree, and Albert, and Debbie, and Shalom, they also paid a price for this. And so I want to acknowledge all of them. And I want to just tell you that it's been amazing for me in the last 53 years of my life to be in the presence of that, because it's the rarest thing. So thank you, I love you. Thank you.
I'll keep this short. Just on a different trajectory about Al Rojas. You know, Al came to the city a lot, kind of to explore and take in other things with our family and just meet people in the city who he was organizing with. But when he showed up, we also got into conversations about many other things. And Albert was somebody who was voracious. Beyond just organizing, he was voracious about film and music, and he had so many interests, he couldn't take it all in. The lives that this man lived are multitudes. And you could start with, you know, he would have probably gone into filmmaking because it was a true passion of his. And if he'd lived longer, that was probably the next step for him. And always there was music in his life. James Brown, Motown. You can name a few, everybody can shout it out. You know, I know you all know Albert's love of culture, and I just feel that, you know, he's ever present. And I know that his grandson Armand spent a lot of time, many hours, documenting and interviewing with him. And I think that that will all come out, you know, as we start revealing Albert's life. He is more ever present. And we're going to learn a lot more about Albert and all the many things that he was passionate about. And I love you guys, and thank you.
Hi there, everybody. I'm a fortunate one to have married into the Trachtenberg family. I'm Jeffrey Miller. And this morning I woke up wondering, you know, what I would have to say about Albert. I have known Albert now for 40 years. And so I wrote something I'd like to read. So as I grew older, I've come to know that life is full of patterns. Each year, the mockingbirds return to the nest in the trees that surround my home, sharing their songs, their melodious voices, echoing the wind, the wailing sirens that daily race through our streets, the high and low pitches and cries of newborn babies. They stay for weeks, then move along and fly away, only to be replaced by flocks of bluebirds, intent on reigning over all other things. This pattern happens year after year. Reflecting on Albert Rojas' life, it has become clear that a consistency remained throughout his time, a pattern of reaching deep into the soul of humanity, a constant commitment to awakening the world, an unrelenting voice focused on revealing the realities of lives that are too often suppressed and ignored. Albert's life was indeed a blessing to those who he knew, to his family, to his friends, and workers who joined him in the struggle to pull back the veil that so fully covers those that toil in the fields of North America and in Mexico. His constant and consistent action affected more than his family, more than his friends and co-activists. His life has certainly impacted those that never knew Albert, though his clear focus year after year, bending the arc toward justice for workers, for people struggling to live, and indeed for us all. He has left us in body, but his voice and his life's work will certainly echo in generations to come. There can be nothing more noble than what Albert's life has been. How lucky we are, how blessed I am to have lived in the time of Albert's song that rang out so clearly for justice and for truth. Thank you.
I'm Robert. I'm the youngest of the group here. And this is Albert's day, but I wanted to give a shout out to Elena. And behind every great man is a strong woman. And this was a woman who had a voice, an intelligent, thoughtful, strong voice. I remember her at rallies and just being blown away at what a force she was. And she was like a mother to me, and he was like an uncle. And I just want to say how much I love you, Elena, and all of the Rojases.
Peter Baird and some music. The canciones para nuestro papá. Oh, so, well, maybe they will. Good. Sorry.
Are we live yet? Yes, we are. Buenas tardes, everyone. My name is Peter Baird. I'm here because I was a good friend of Al Rojas, We went to Mexico as international observers in the election when Cárdenas was running. I was a member of the UFWA at the El Malcriado, and we're here to sing a few songs that Albert would have liked to hear. So, first of all, condolences to Desiree and her mother and the family. Desiree, your word.
I want to make an announcement. We have some lunches that will be distributed. They're over here in the benches, and I believe the Brown Berets are going to come out and give some out, but eventually after the music, if you want to walk over there and get a lunch, that would be good. Okay, thank you.
And with me is Sandra Olszewski. Give her a welcome, please. So, we're not so much performers, we're song leaders, right? Gloria knows that. Hi, Gloria. We've been singing with the Sacramento Labor Chorus, with El Coro de Sacramento. So, I'm going to sing just some pieces of the songs that Al knew and that Al liked, and you can participate by singing along with us. So, do you remember this one? Hasta México ha llegado. Remember that one? Viva la huelga en el field. So we're going to do that. Please sing along with us. For Al, if you're listening up there, this tells the story of what we just heard about when the Filipino Union went out and then Chavez's union joined. So this is the story of the beginning of UFWA. Hasta México ha llegado la noticia muy alegre que el heno es diferente. Pues el pueblo ya está en contra de los rancheros ingreídos que acababan con la gente. Y como somos hermanos, la alegría compartimos con todos los campesinos. ¡Viva la revolución! ¡Viva nuestra asociación! ¡Viva huelga en general! El día 8 de septiembre, de los campos de Belén nos salieron los filipinos. Así es. Y después de 2 semanas para unirse en la batalla salieron los mexicanos. Y juntos vamos cumpliendo con la marcha de la historia para liberar el pueblo. ¡Viva la revolución! ¡Viva nuestra asociación! ¡Viva huelga en general! ¡Viva la huelga en el fin! ¡Viva la causa de la historia! La raza llena de gloria. La victoria va a cumplir. And as we've been hearing, Al Rojas was a union man, right? He was a union man, and he would say, what are we going to do with our unions? We're going to let them roll. We're going to roll. We're going to roll. We're going to roll the union on. We're going to roll. We're going to roll. We're going to roll the union on. Amazon gets in the way, what are we going to do? Amazon gets in the way, we're going to roll right over them. We're going to roll right over them. We're going to roll right over them. Amazon gets in the way, we're going to roll right over them. We're going to roll the union. Gotta roll, sing it with us. We're going to roll. We're going to roll. We're going to roll the union on. We're going to roll. We're going to roll. We're going to roll the union. And if the bosses get in the way, we're going to roll right over them. We're going to roll right over them. We're going to roll right over them. If the bosses get in the way, we're going to roll right over them. We're going to roll the union on. We're going to roll. We're going to roll. We're going to roll the union on. We're going to roll. represented here, CTA, the SCIU, the Electricistas de Mexico, the ISME, all of those people who are honoring Al on this stage. And I think we'll close with another classic song of these kind of demonstrations that we sing. We have our beliefs, right? And no one's gonna move us. No nos moverán. And as they say in English, we shall not be moved. So let's remember this song. And this one, let's see if we can sing it. It starts with no. Can you give me a no? No. Another, give me a no. No. We sing no, no, no nos moverán. No, no, no nos moverán como un árbol firme junto al río. No nos moverán. In English, we shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. No, ye shall not be. Give me a verse, Sandra.
Unidos ganaremos.
Unidos ganaremos, no nos moverán. Unidos ganaremos, no nos moverán. Como un árbol firme junto al río, no nos moverán. Give me a no, 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 no nos moverán. No, no, no nos moverán. Como un árbol firme junto al río, no nos moverán. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. Al Rojas, presente. Gracias.
Gracias. I now have the honor of introducing Fatima Garcia, another child, another offspring of the Rojas family, heart, mind, and body focused on this struggle at this young age, a leader, an eloquent defender and advocate. I give you Fatima.
So, Gramps le gustaba el desmadre. So, I need you to join me in chanting this cheer, porque somos un pueblo sin fronteras. Can you say it with me? Somos un pueblo. Somos un pueblo. No se escucha, no comimos nuestros frijolitos y nopales. Somos un pueblo sin fronteras. Eso es todo. Sé que Grampy siempre le gustaba hablar el español porque cuando estaba creciendo nos contaba las historias de que él no podía hablar en español, ¿verdad? Porque los que vinieron a colonizarnos fueron y nos arrebataron nuestras tradiciones, nos arrebataron nuestros lenguajes originales. Entonces hoy día no hablo un lenguaje original, pero hablo español y quiero compartir este español con cada una y uno de ustedes. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. Algo que he aprendido, tengo un honor de decir que soy una organizadora, una semilla, porque Al Rojas me hizo una organizadora y es un honor de seguir el trabajo con cada una de ustedes y cada una de usted me da una felicidad. Ayer que escuché a mi hermana Desiree hablar, todas estas semanas han estado muy confusas, ¿verdad? Dije, sé cómo empecé y sé cómo quiero terminar con esta pasión con el pueblo, igual que Grampy me enseñó a mí. Y eso es lo que voy a hacer. Voy a seguir con cada uno de ustedes caminando esta revolución, ¿verdad? Porque como
nosotros. Nos infectó una pasión para luchar para los más vulnerables, no pobres, porque no somos pobres, nosotros somos ricos en ideas, somos ricos en amor, somos ricos en pasión, somos ricos en ayudar a uno y a nuestros vecinos, ¿verdad? Al pueblo, de seguir adelante hasta que no vivamos una vida digna. Usted, yo, todas y todos vamos a seguir organizando, movilizando y asegurar que estos sindicatos que se han hecho sindicatos charros se regresen a los trabajadores, porque nosotros sabemos que la fuerza viene de abajo, de los trabajadores. La fuerza son las y los trabajadores. Vamos a seguir caminando con integridad, porque eso es lo que él nos enseñó. Es de, no importa el dinero que te van a dar, no importa los carros, los lujos, las casas, eso no importa. Lo que importa es de que cada uno de nuestros hijos y generaciones que vienen en el futuro, que puedan comer, que tengan hogar, que tengan aseguranza médica, educación, que tengan todo lo que necesitan para que puedan triunfar y puedan encontrar su pasión, para que ellos se enseñen quién son ellos mismos. Como yo tuve la oportunidad de aprender quién soy yo. Y yo soy una mujer original de este continente. No somos inmigrantes, somos originales, pueblos originales. Y eso me da, no sé si llorar, si gritar, pero tengo un gran honor de caminar con la familia Rojas, con Allen, con Kat, con todos nuestros mentores, APAR. Muchas gracias a los sindicatos. Sin ustedes, Alan, Steve, a todos nuestros compañeros y compañeras que están aquí, Norm, que nos ayudó mucho. Muchas gracias por estar con nosotros en este duelo, pero no es duelo, ¿verdad? Somos semillas y vamos a seguir creciendo, vamos a seguir este camino rojo que el comandante Rojas nos ha enseñado como maestro, y vamos a seguir ese camino juntos y juntas hasta la victoria. Comandante Rojas, ¡Rojas vive! ¡La lucha sigue!
It is a great privilege to introduce Steve Seltzer and Cosme Tori, working with the Workweek Labor Video Project. Steve is a longtime activist, chronicler, and proponent of rank-and-file militancy. Welcome, Steve. Let's give it up.
Come on, Cosme. A man without a woman cannot do what he's doing. Women lead the world. Women move the world, really. That's who moves the world. Women are in the leadership of the struggle. So many struggles. Farm workers, all kinds of struggles. Women are in the leadership. So, El Rojas Presente, he's here today with us. He's here with us in his struggle, in which I embraced and worked with him, is for the unity of the working classes, for the power of working people. And Al's lifelong struggle to organize farm workers continues. In fact, in California today, most farm workers are unorganized. That's a crime. That's a crime. Especially when the question of the food is critical. Who is doing our food? Who is producing our food? It's the farm workers. They have human rights. They have worker rights. And they're not being respected. They're dying because of COVID. This pandemic has killed farm workers and their families, food processing workers at Foster Farms. It's criminal what's happened in California, in this rich state, where there are less than 200 inspectors, OSHA inspectors, for 18 million workers. Is there no respect for workers in California? No. Is there no respect for workers in California? No. I videotape, and Cosby as well, the struggle of Al Rojas. And one of the things that we have to do is fight for the unity of the U.S. and the Mexican working class. We are the same. We are the same. These borders are artificial. These borders are for the capitalists to export capital and exploit workers in Baja, California, where workers are paid $7 an hour. That is a crime. Right across the border, slave labor, right next to California. Why is that? United States, the billionaires in this country have recolonized Mexico. They privatized the railroads, they privatized the mines, they privatized the airlines and telecom. The profits of the wealth of Mexico are going to the billionaires. They're not going to the people of Mexico. The people of Mexico continue to suffer. That has to end. And we need, really, in the labor movement, in the unions, to have direct relationship with the farm workers, direct relationship with the electrical workers. Why is it in California, we're right next door to Mexico, but there's no connection with the Mexican workers? Al Rojas is a symbol of unity between the Mexican and U.S. workers. He's a symbol of unity because he brought Mexican and U.S. workers together. But we have a responsibility to change the dynamic. The struggle in defense of California workers and U.S. workers is connected with the defense of the Mexican working class, of workers in Latin America and Central America. We are the same. We are the same. We need to unite all workers. And today, with the growth of fascism, with the growth of open xenophobia and racism by this Trump, but by other right-wing forces, we have to organize against that. We have to defend the Asian Americans who are under attack, the racist attacks on Asian Americans, xenophobia, and war. This country is spending trillions on military. For what? When people are homeless right here in Sacramento, people are sleeping in the street, they can't get health care, and we are spending trillions for war. Our war really is at home. Our war is at home against these billionaires who would spend money for war and more police, more military, while our people suffer. California is a very rich state. It's one of the richest in the world, fourth largest economy. We have billionaires here, multi-billionaires. They need to pay for this crisis. They need to pay for housing so everyone can be housed in California. They need to pay for health care so everyone has health care in California. This is a basic human right. This is what Al fought for. And we believe, and I believed, and Al believed, we need a labor party. We need a political party of working people based on the unions, based on the oppressed, that's going to implement this program. We cannot, I remember we found out that one of the Driscoll family was on the board of directors of the Agriculture Department when we were fighting Driscoll. And Al and I talked. We said, listen, what the hell is that guy doing on the board of agriculture in California when he's supporting slave labor in Mexico and the Baja against the workers? We protested and we got his ass out. We forced him out of his office. That's a victory. That's a victory for working people. I had once said, we have a political vacuum in California. We have a political vacuum because we have politicians who are leaders, not workers who are leaders. I suggested to Al he should run for governor of California. He would be a better governor than all these other politicians because he's a man of the people. He's a man of working people. He's a man of the farm workers and all working people. Lastly, Al is an internationalist. One of the happiest times of him when he got support of the French workers and other workers for the Driscoll workers. He was excited about that because he understood, as we all should, is that our fate is tied up with the fate of working people all over the world. Only when we unite with all working people all over the world we would be successful. We cannot be pitted against workers in Russia, workers in China and other countries. What right do we have? Why should we encircle China? Why should we blame Russia? We have to start with this country, rectifying and changing the dynamics so people have a future. And as we come out of this pandemic, and I hope we will soon, what are we going to have? We're going to have the same structure that exploits people for profit. And that is what it's all about. Because the people who own the farms, the people who own these multinationals, they don't care about the workers, they care about profiteering. And Amazon and these companies, they want to make billions off of suffering, and that's what has to end. We need working people like Al. Al gave his life for us, for all working people. We need to emulate and build an international working class movement. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Al, we love you. And thank you very much for all the work you did for the people, us. Thanks.
We're at a moment in our program that's very rich, and I hope everybody will bear with us. We have greetings from our comrades in Mexico. People that Al worked with over many years, people who have very important messages to send to all of us, and they've been connected through Zoom. Throughout this program, it's been streamed live all across Mexico on every platform imaginable. And so I'd like you to please stand with us as we welcome 7 speakers from different parts of Mexico. They will be speaking in Spanish. I will be making brief introductions of each of them so you can know who they are and they don't have to spend time so we can move along. We asked them to do brief statements, which is hard when you're speaking about Al and so many things that you want to say. So the first person I'm going to call on, la primera persona de la lista, ¿están en línea? Luis Carlos, ¿está todo el mundo en línea? La primera intervención es del compañero Luis Carlos Aro. Luis Carlos Aro from the Organization of People and Workers in Baja California, based in the case of Luis Carlos in Tijuana, Baja California, México. Bienvenido, Luis Carlos. There's a little bit of a lag. Luis Carlos, no se te oye.
¿Tienes una gorra de desvío?
Bueno, ¿ya se escucha?
Empezamos con Luis Carlos o con José Humberto, ¿por qué no?
Sí, bueno.
Humberto, ¿quién está tomando la palabra ahorita? ¿Luis Carlos?
Aquí Luis Carlos Aro.
Ok, Luis Carlos, por favor, y después le sigue el compañero Humberto Montes de Oca del SME.
Muchas gracias. Bien, pues, muchísimas gracias por invitarme a este gran evento. Es un gran honor poder compartir algunas palabras con ustedes. Había enviado un mensaje a la compañera hermana de lucha de Siria al principio y leeré un poco y seré muy breve. Hay seres humanos que pasan por la vida y dan todo de sí y se les considera estrellas. Y luego está Al, nuestro hermano revolucionario, quien ha sembrado un legado eterno, hijo del pueblo y de la tierra, de Pancho Villa y Emiliano Zapata, de Che Guevara, abuelo de todos y todas. Hermanos y hermanas, les digo con toda certeza que el hermano y compañero Al no ha muerto. Allí donde haya una mano dura arrancando los frutos de la tierra, allí donde haya una espalda inclinada, donde haya sudor y cansancio proletario, ahí está Al Rojas. Allí donde surja una voz que diga basta, que grite alto, no más, allí está Al Rojas. Donde se reúnan y unan las luchas, las jornaleras y jornaleros agrícolas, donde luchen por sindicalizarse, por afiliarse al CINJA, al movimiento proletario en Estados Unidos y en México, ahí está Al Rojas. En cada mano del obrero y la obrera, mujeres, estudiantes. Al Rojas impulsó siempre con nosotros y tuvimos la fortuna de organizar el encuentro binacional contra el TLCAN, ahora TEMEC. No dudó en apoyar la huelga de obreros en Matamoros, no dudó en apoyar la huelga de obreros de San Quintín en 2015. Siempre impulsó conscientemente, en unidad por los contratos colectivos, el boicot a Driscoll. Por esto, el día de hoy usamos esta camiseta que él nos regaló y que fue nuestra campaña principal en todos estos años. Y gritamos y decimos todos unidos y muy fuerte, boicot a Driscoll. Eso es todo por mi parte, les agradezco muchísimo. Unamos las fuerzas en Estados Unidos y en México, unamos las fuerzas, mujeres y hombres trabajadores. Al Rojas vive, la lucha sigue. Al Rojas vive, la lucha sigue y sigue.
Al Rojas vive, la lucha sigue. Al Rojas vive, la lucha sigue. Al Rojas vive, la lucha sigue, sigue. Al Rojas vive, la lucha sigue, sigue. La próxima persona que va a tomar la palabra es un gran compañero de años de Al Rojas, dirigente de un sindicato que es la columna vertebral del movimiento de resistencia en México, la columna vertebral de la lucha por la soberanía de México, columna vertebral de la lucha por los derechos laborales y humanos. Es un honor presentar a Humberto Montes de Oca del Sindicato Mexicano de Electricistas. From the Electrical Workers Union, Humberto Montes de Oca.
Muchas gracias, compañeros, compañeras. Para nosotros es un gran honor el poder expresar nuestro sentimiento de solidaridad por la lamentable pérdida de un gran hombre, de un gran luchador social como Al Rojas. Con él tuvimos oportunidad de compartir la lucha de los trabajadores mexicanos, de los trabajadores norteamericanos, porque para Al Rojas no había fronteras. Él alimentó un sentimiento y una conciencia de clase que trascendió los muros, las fronteras, los idiomas, y supo comunicarnos a todos los que estuvimos cerca de él ese ánimo, esa esperanza y esa firmeza en la lucha de la clase trabajadora norteamericana y mexicana. Para nosotros, del Sindicato Mexicano de Electricistas, Al Rojas es un ejemplo a seguir. Nuestra organización le rinde homenaje por todos estos años de solidaridad por nuestra digna lucha de resistencia. El Sindicato Mexicano de Electricistas durante los últimos 11 años ha librado una dura batalla por el trabajo y la vida, y siempre tuvimos dentro de nuestras fronteras y del lado de los Estados Unidos no solamente un amigo y un aliado, un ejemplo de lucha a seguir para todos aquellos que no nos rendimos, que seguimos adelante y que guardamos muy en el fondo de nuestros corazones y de nuestro puño cerrado el legado histórico de nuestro compañero Al Rojas. ¡Viva Al Rojas! ¡Viva la unidad de los trabajadores de México y el mundo! viva la clase obrera, viva Al Rojas y su inmortal ejemplo de lucha. Muchas gracias, compañeros. Viva también el Sindicato Mexicano de Electricistas.
¡Que viva el Sindicato Mexicano de Electricistas! ¡Que viva Al Rojas! The next speaker comes from the movement in San Quintin. Farm workers, organizer, a young activist organizer who's an inspiration like compañera Fátima of the future of our movement. It's in good hands with Octavio Ángel López of the Alianza de Organizaciones Nacional, Estatal y Municipal por la Justicia Social. Bienvenido, compañero Octavio.
Gracias, compañeras y compañeros. Es un gusto poder saludarles. Hablar de Al Rojas es hablar de historia, es hablar de una lucha que nos remonta desde los años 60, cuando Al organiza el boicot en Pittsburgh. Fue una hazaña porque Al nos compartía, nos decía, cuando a mí César Chávez me dice, Al, vamos a irnos al boicot contra las uvas, y Al le dice, pero ¿cómo le vamos a hacer? ¿Tú sabes que es un boicot? No sé, pero lo vamos a experimentar y vamos a ganar. Y fue así que Al estuvo organizando en Pittsburgh, y que hoy podemos hablar de toda la historia de Al Rojas, que se remonta también en el 2015, donde él dice literalmente, ustedes me hicieron revivir, me hicieron recordar lo que pasamos en California por los derechos de los trabajadores. Empieza una lucha por defender a los trabajadores braceros, ahora bajo la etiqueta de trabajadores huéspedes. Y Al Rojas siempre supo que el movimiento de San Quintín fue legítimo y que además representaba a los millones de trabajadores en México, a los millones de trabajadores en Latinoamérica que todos los días cruzan la frontera para buscar el sueño americano. Decía Al Rojas, somos un pueblo sin fronteras, no somos inmigrantes, no nos pueden poner ese término porque somos nosotros los originarios. Estamos muy agradecidos, pero también tristes por la partida de nuestro compañero, amigo y en lo personal nuestro mentor, que siempre estuvo al pendiente del movimiento y de muchos otros movimientos. Al lado de Al Rojas aprendimos mucho. Estamos seguros que con el ejemplo y la lucha de Al Rojas vamos a ganar este boicot contra Driscolls y contra la empresa Andrew Williamson, porque Al siempre entendió y siempre me decía, Octavio, es que no meramente es el gobierno, son los empresarios, y ahí está el mero problema de que se deben arrebatar los contratos colectivos a los empresarios. Vamos a seguir ese ejemplo, pero siempre presionando a través de este boicot contra la empresa transnacional Driscolls, que es una empresa que está exportando las frutas, las berries a prácticamente todo el mundo. Al siempre estará en nuestros corazones, porque Al no murió. Al vive hoy más que siempre. Viva Al Rojas, viva la huelga, sí se va a poder siempre, como él lo decía.
Gracias, Octavio. Octavio shared with me something very important. We had mentioned earlier that the open letter from the Rojas family to President López Obrador was instrumental in that greeting that he gave at his press conference and the condolence message. Well, we've also learned from Octavio that the Alianza and the workers in San Quintin have been contacted by the President of Mexico, who's asked to meet with them to see what can be done for labor rights. La próxima persona, el próximo orador, es también de San Quintín, uno de los dirigentes de base porque siempre son dirigentes de base, los verdaderos dirigentes. Bonifacio Martínez Cruz, también de la Alianza de Organizaciones Nacional, Estatal y Municipal por la Justicia Social. Bonifacio, disculpa. Saludos, Bonifacio, por favor, la palabra. Octavio, ¿se nos fue Bonifacio? Ahí está. ¿Va a tomar la palabra?
Sí. Muy buenas tardes, compañeros y compañeras. Reciban un saludo combativo de la Alianza de Organizaciones. Hoy, a nombre de su servidor, de ustedes como fundador de esta organización y de este movimiento de 2015, donde nos dio la oportunidad de conocer y pues aprender de todos ustedes y sobre todo nuestro gran general Larry Rojas y por supuesto de los sindicatos que apoyaron y organizaciones que apoyaron a este movimiento. Pues aprendimos bastantes de ustedes, compañeros. Por supuesto, lo comentaba nuestro compañero Octavio ahorita, que de todo lo que se hizo aquí en San Quintín, pues fue a la experiencia de ustedes mismos que nos compartieron este movimiento, que tienen ese corazón de lucha. Pues hoy decirles, compañeros, pues aquí estamos con ustedes, a la familia de compañero Rojas, lo dice muy bien aquí Octavio, aquí seguirá las semillas de general Rojas. Compañero, pues es lo que me resta decirles a cada uno de ustedes, pues agradecerles de corazón a nombre de las y los jornaleros de San Quintín. La lucha sigue, Al Rojas sigue y aquí seguirá por siempre. La lucha sigue.
Boycott Driscoll!
Boycott Driscoll! Boycott Driscoll! Boycott Driscoll! Boycott Driscoll!
Compañeros, creo decir en nombre de la familia Rojas, del ACLA Sacramento y de todos nosotros, de que el boicot sigue y que la lucha que emprendimos con AL continuará hasta la victoria en San Quintín. Tendrán y tienen ese compromiso, deciré, ese compromiso nuestro de ahondar, de seguir, profundizar y mantener los lazos de apoyo a ustedes. Tengan esa convicción, estamos con ustedes.
Leerles un pequeño poema de Ali I, el cantor venezolano de la Revolución venezolana, de la Revolución latinoamericana, para terminar con esto, con mi participación. Dice: a Al Rojas, los que mueren por la vida no pueden llamarse muertos, y a partir de este momento es prohibido llorarlos. Que se callen los redobles en todos los campanarios. Vamos, compa, carajo, que para amanecer no hacen falta gallinas, sino cantar de gallos. Ellos no serán bandera para taparnos con ella, y el que no la pueda alzar, que abandone la pelea. No es tiempo de recular ni de vivir de leyendas. Canta, 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 compañero, canta, papá Rojas, canta, Rojas, canten, compañeros, cantemos todos juntos. Gracias, compañeros.
Gustavo, qué preciosura, muchas gracias. Concluimos este segmento con la participación de un gran compañero que siempre ha estado al lado de Al cuando se trataba de dar una conferencia de prensa, de organizar algún evento en la Ciudad de México o doquiera en México, siempre se llamaba Armando Bolaños. We end this segment with the presentation of Armando Bolaños. Whenever Al wanted to organize a press conference or get the word out about this action or that action, get the word out in Mexico, we always, the first call went to Armando Bolaños, el Movimiento Aztlán, también del Movimiento Migrante. Armando, bienvenido.
escucha. Armando. No se escuchó, vas a tener que volver a iniciar, por favor. Activar el audio, por favor.
A ver, Armando, no se te escucha.
A ver, ¿se escucha?
Ahora sí.
Bueno, pues yo quiero decir que Al Rojas vive, la lucha sigue. Donde quiera que haya una injusticia, Al Rojas estaba. Yo soy oaxaqueño y Al Rojas era un oaxaqueño nato, de corazón, como los Flores Magón, como Benito Juárez, como esos, Demetrio Vallejo, el líder sindical. Conocí a Al Rojas en el 2006, en el fraude electoral contra el ahora presidente de México, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Desde ahí fue un amor a primera vista. Nunca nos separamos. Luchamos juntos en el 2006 con la Asamblea Popular de los Pueblos de Oaxaca para liberar a los presos políticos del Chacal Ulises Ruiz. Esa fue una de las luchas también de Al Rojas. El apoyo a los maestros de la sección 22 en Oaxaca. También participando en el Encuentro Internacional de los Trabajadores y apoyando al Sindicato Mexicano de Electricistas. La visión del primer gobernador migrante de Michoacán. La formación de un verdadero partido de los trabajadores en México. También en la visión de Al Rojas por el derecho a no emigrar, documentos que le entregué personalmente al ahora presidente de México, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, y que toma como bandera de la migración, que el gobierno tiene la obligación de proteger a sus ciudadanos para que tengan una vida digna, no abandonen a su familia, su cultura, y que tengan de dónde vivir. Hace un rato escuché que la familia Itliong habló del comienzo de esa lucha. Al Rojas depositó en mis manos una carta que yo mismo le entregué a Diego Luna para confirmar y que la historia de esa lucha diga la verdad en cuanto a los actores que vivieron la lucha de los trabajadores del campo en Estados Unidos, en California. Porque para Al Rojas, la familia Itliong, los filipinos, fueron el comienzo de la lucha, y que la lucha no se centraba en un solo hombre, como César Chávez, sino todos los que lucharon, todos los que compusieron y todos los que crearon el sí se puede. No fue de César Chávez, sino de un trabajador que gritó en un mitin en San Diego, California, sí se puede, y despertó la esperanza para todo el mundo. También la lucha de los migrantes negros, haitianos, de los trabajadores de San Quintín, de los trabajadores de Matamoros, en cualquier lugar donde hubiera una injusticia o algo que hacer, Al Rojas estuvo presente. Al Rojas para mí es un compañero que tarde o temprano nos encontraremos, y en el cual el dinero para Al Rojas era una manera de servir. Cuántas comidas, cuántas atenciones tuvimos de él. Al Rojas vive. Al Rojas no ha muerto. Al Rojas se multiplicará en miles, tanto en México como en Estados Unidos. Porque Al Rojas nunca dejó de ser mexicano. Ese espíritu guerrero, ese espíritu de su tierra, de sus raíces michoacanas, del mundo prehispánico, de los guerreros dignos. De ahí venía la sangre roja de Al Rojas. Por eso es que la visión de unidad de los sindicatos mexicanos y de los sindicatos de Estados Unidos, confrontándose contra los multinacionales depredadoras, tanto en Estados Unidos como en México, es una visión que hay que continuar, que hay que seguir, porque luchamos contra el mismo enemigo, pero el enemigo de la clase trabajadora, de la raza humana, donde le pagan a los trabajadores el San Quintín 50 centavos por hora, ¿sí? Y cuando ahora en esta pandemia nos reíamos, son los que ponen la comida en la mesa. Y hablaba yo con Rojas y decíamos, es que Jesús, los católicos hablan de todas las religiones, Jesús, sí, pero Jesús el revolucionario, Jesús también el del campo, en Coachella, en San Quintín, en muchos lugares, es el que pone el milagro de la comida, pero a veces se queda sin comer. Es injusto en el rico, en una de las economías más grandes de Estados Unidos, que el que siembra, el que cosecha la comida tenga hambre, que padezca la miseria. Cuando no hay un reconocimiento, también Al Rojas luchaba contra el racismo, contra el clasismo en Estados Unidos y en México. Al Rojas vive, Al Rojas no ha muerto, Al Rojas es semilla, una semilla que se multiplicará por vida. Hasta pronto, camarada Rojas, la lucha sigue. A mi compañero y amigo Rojo Rojas. Hasta la victoria.
Somos rojos y rojas.
Está Cosme en la línea, ya se pudo conectar.
Compañero Cosme, la palabra.
No se escucha, compañero.
Y buenas tardes, compañeras y compañeros. Estamos aquí recordando al gran compañero Al Rojas. Para nosotros ha sido un gran honor haber participado junto a él, hombro a hombro, paso a paso, en la lucha por los derechos de los trabajadores del campo. Al Rojas para nosotros es un líder de los que decía el Che, esos que son indispensables, esos que van a hacer falta siempre en la lucha por los más oprimidos. Al Rojas va a vivir siempre en el corazón de los jornaleros, de los marginados, de los que han sido despreciados por la clase política opresora. Al Rojas para nosotros ha sido un ejemplo de lucha y queremos seguir ese ejemplo. Al Rojas, gracias por darnos esa luz, por darnos esa energía, por darnos esa paz de saber que es posible otro campo, que es posible un nuevo México sin opresores. Al Rojas, gracias por tu generosidad. Al Rojas, gracias porque fuiste un hombre solidario y vas a seguir viviendo en nuestro corazón y aquí en todas las luchas que podamos emprender. Siempre estarás con nosotros y serás un guía. Muchas gracias, Al Rojas. Bendiciones a la familia y un saludo fraternal a todos los compañeros. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, compañero Cosmo. Muchas gracias.
After this amazing display of worker solidarity and international solidarity, I'm proud to introduce Fabrizio Sasso, Executive Director of the Sacramento Central Labor Council, which represents 17,000 union members and has been in the forefront of workers' the right for overtime for farm workers and the $15 an hour minimum. Fabrizio.
Thank you. Good afternoon, brothers, sisters, siblings. First, I want to thank the Rojas family for this invitation to say a few words about your beloved father. Thank you for sharing him with us for all these years. We all share your grief at his passing. You know, Al was an extraordinary man who did his things on his own terms. He's a tenacious fighter, persistent organizer, a revolutionary, a champion for the working class, for civil rights, for human rights, and for justice. He embodied the best that our labor movement has to offer. He was motivated by his two passions, his love for his family and his quest to make the world a just place for everyone. His body of work puts him in this rarefied air of labor leaders. But unlike most of his contemporaries, to know him is to know that it was never about him. It was always about improving the lives of others, and that's how he lived. And he sacrificed himself for the greater good. Because of that, he expected more out of all of us, out of his family, who, like Al, were taught to raise their voices when they witness an injustice. He expected more out of organized labor, challenging leadership to create good trouble. And while he could have turned cynical in his decades of struggle, he expected more out of our elected leaders and still believed our government is capable to do the right thing when people rise up. He pushed all of us, and he made us better for it. And he made the world better for it. We could learn a lot from Al's example because of his mentorship. And so many will continue to push because of that. You know, as the executive director of the Labor Council, Al and I worked closely over the years on a variety of issues, and I'm grateful for the time that I've had with him and all the lessons that he's taught us and taught me. Prior to joining the Labor Council, I worked as an organizer on the Fight for 15, and this is where I first met Al almost a decade ago. And I remember me, a young organizer, scared, making the rounds to community leaders, sitting down with him and other members of Law Club, talking about this fight to unionize fast food workers and raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And Al sat there quietly. As I made my pitch, he sat there quietly, and his face emotionless, just listening the whole meeting, like a good organizer would do. And finally, when I finished talking, Al, you know, with his quiet voice, because he knew when to raise his voice, and he knew that his voice had power in it. So he knew when to use that power. Al asked, okay, this is good, but is SEIU going to help the farm workers who make those hamburgers possible? And I didn't know what to say. You know, I just kind of looked at him dumbly, and I confidently said, that's not the plan right now, but I can ask. And that was the wrong answer, because it pissed him off. And he went into this long explanation about the plight of farm workers here in Mexico and how corporations are exploiting their labor, paying starvation wages lower than fast food workers here, and being treated poorly. Then he criticized the government's inaction and organized labor's failure to support these workers. I got my first Al Rojas treatment, and I wasn't prepared for any of this. And in my heart, I agreed with everything he just said, but I had to stay on message. So I said stupidly, This campaign is about fast food workers right now, and we have to keep that focus. Needless to say, he wasn't pleased by that response either, so he stood up, he gave me another tongue lashing right before he left the room. And I learned two valuable lessons that day in my very first meeting with Al Rojas. One, the struggles of all workers are intertwined, regardless of job type or borders. And two, know when to shut the F up when your elders are trying to teach you a lesson, especially Al Rojas. And from that point on, I made sure to work hard to earn Brother Al's respect. And our relationship got better over the years. And when I took over the Labor Council, Al was there to talk about the Driscoll boycott. You give him 2 minutes and he'll take 20. And that's another thing I learned from him. That's why I had to write this down. Because he taught us the effects of bad trade deals like NAFTA and forced migration, the treatment of the farm workers in San Quintin, migrant camps, Medicare for all. And I'll remember always turning what was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting in Congresswoman Matsui's office into a 3-hour session with teachers from Oaxaca who were there fighting for their union and are being killed back home. When Al was all in on a fight, he was fully committed and wouldn't stop until he accomplished his mission. And if you didn't agree with him, he didn't mind telling you what he thinks about you. Nobody ever really sets out to get on Al's bad side. But from time to time, we all found ourselves there. I did my best to try to avoid it, not because I was afraid of getting chewed out by him, but because I had respect for the man and for his legacy. You know, running a labor council, I spent a lot of time in meetings, on calls, but whenever Al Rojas called, I stepped away and I took that call out of respect for the man. And whenever he would call asking me for something or asking the labor council for something, I'd never deny his request, except for one time when he asked me to go down to Mexico and I couldn't, and he got really angry with me, really upset. And I said, well, Al, when have I ever denied anything to you? And he said, never. And I think it speaks to his reasonableness and his integrity. And one last thing I want to say about Al is that he gave credit where credit is due, especially to young organizers and activists. And over the last few years, you'd always see him with the cell phone, taking videos of actions and protests, marches, and speeches. He had a little grin peeking out from underneath that trademark hat. He was documenting the righteous work of the next generation of leaders he helped create. And in retrospect, part of me believes he wanted to make sure that these new leaders are recognized for their work, that it was properly archived, and the history they made would be told in their own words. And we can understand why this was important for Al, as he suffered the indignity of having many of his contributions go unrecognized. Never again, hermano. Today, we celebrate you for the warrior, the revolutionary, the activist, the organizer, and all-around badass you were. And we all should commit to making sure everyone knows your legacy. Rest in power, brother.
Thank you, Fabricio. You captured him so well and your story relationship with him. In labor, if you were in a room with my dad, let me tell you, if there was a disagreement, he was going to challenge you flat out. But that was the love that he had and the passion that he had in having that dialogue and that exchange that was so important. And trust me, I was often on the other end of that hard talk too. knew in life, but it was love. So now we've come to a moment where I'd like to introduce to you a longtime friend of our family, someone who had the chance to talk to my dad a month before he passed, who hadn't spoken to him in probably about 10 or 12 years, but is a dear friend, and my dad was so happy to talk to him and his wife. But please welcome musician, songwriter, wonderful friend, Neil Conway, and his wife, Deborah Conway there. But they've come so far to be here. He wrote a song for my dad. Please give it up for Neil.
I loved Albert. The day we met, we instantly became friends, but one thing about him is he would call me and say, "Are you busy today?" And I would have to ask him, what do I need to wear? Because I didn't know if I was going to be holding a sign or meeting the mayor of Mexico City. So he kind of kept me on edge of what I was going to do that day, but I always went with him because he always led me on. And I wrote this song for him. Well, I actually wrote it, he liked it, but he always said, press on, always move on. So here we go. I press on, I press on, I press on, I press on, to that mark, on to that calling, on to my Savior, on forever and a day. So I wasn't a little less than 10 years ago, I told him I wanted to be a reverend, and I was in a hospital bed, and he said, well, get your reverend's license. So I got on the computer and I did. And then about 7 years ago I talked to him and I said, I want to work with wounded warriors. And he said, well, what do you got to do? And I go, I got to get my chaplain's license. And that'll take a long time. And I talked to him last year and I just had got it. It took me 6 years to get it, but he egged me on and pushed me on, so I press on. I press on. On to that mark, on to that calling, on to my Savior, on forever and a day. I press on, I press on, I press on, I press on. Love you, Albert, always have. Thanks for helping me. Thank you, Dulay.
I now have the honor to present Akbar Bib from SEIU 1021, one of the unions that made a point of solidarity with the workers in San Quintin and the Driscoll berry boycott.
How's everybody doing today on this Al Rojas Day? I want to tell you how I remember meeting Al Rojas. The one thing that stuck in my head is his stance. I know you guys didn't have lunch, you've been here for a while, but do me a favor. Let's all stand up and let's throw that fist in the air for Al Rojas. Let's throw that fist in the air for his fight for the working man and woman. Let's throw our fist in the air for every farm worker in America. Let's throw our fist in the air for this brother, this good brother who has done a job well done. You understand? He gave 50 years of his life to the fight. We're the future. That's what he wanted. This is what he wanted to see. Let's keep this going and let's not stop. There is no pause in this fight for fair labor, fair wages, working standards. Right now, like the brother was saying, the fight for 15, the fight for farm workers. We need to be safe. Let's fight for safety for these brothers and sisters out here. Our siblings are dying, right? Let's fight for them. Let's say his name. Say his name. Come on, y'all, let's get it up. Let's say his name. Say it again. Say it again. All right, power to the people.
And now it's my honor to introduce Jamir Sale, who is a revolutionary, a fighter, a leader, an activist. Since he was probably about 3 feet high, he's with the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and their struggle is both national and international.
Thank you very much. So I'm here today representing not just the PSL, Party for Socialism and Liberation, but also the Answer Coalition, stands for Act Now to Stop War and End Racism, as well as Sacramento Area Peace Action, as well as Black August Organizing Committee, Anti-Police Terror Project, and many other organizations I don't have the time to name here, but also send their love and light to the family. I'm standing here today not just as a Black New African. I'm standing here today as a member of the same international working class that Senor Al gave his life to. I am lucky enough to call myself a beneficiary of some of the fruit that we can say that fell from Al's tree. But this tree of wisdom that he shared so much fruit with all of us did not leave with him. That tree he left firmly rooted, not just in Sacramento where he brought all of us together. That tree is not just firmly rooted across the illegal and the border, okay, I'm gonna say the border. It's not just there with the workers, with all the blood, sweat, and tears that he invested into the working movement there. It's not just in Delano or Pittsburgh. It's not just in Palestine where he stood against the Israeli occupation. And it's not anywhere that has a geographic location, because that tree of wisdom that we eat the fruit from is alive in every single one of us today. And that tree lives as long as every single one of us are standing. Because as we stand against injustice, we're carrying on his spirit. We're carrying on his struggle. And that struggle is not one that he would call himself an originator of. That was a struggle he would call himself a continuation of. The same way that we are a continuation of his struggle. So just as it was stated earlier at the beginning of this program, that this is not just a memorial or a funeral. This is a call to action. Because all of the struggles and oppressions that Al gave his life fighting against are still with us. And we have to fight, not just for us, but for the next generation. Because as someone said, there's no way that we can win the revolution. But the struggle is until we either win or we don't lose. Because we leave a struggle for the youth that come after us to pick up and continue on the same way that we're continuing on the struggle for Al. So I just want to give my solidarity from the Muslim community, where it's Ramadan right now. I want to give my solidarity from the New African community facing genocide, mass incarceration, and police terror. I want to give my solidarity from my family who benefited from the wisdom that not just Al shared with us, but the family that he shared with us. Because as a Black New African, I never once felt like a guest as I was struggling alongside Al, as we're struggling against ICE, as we're struggling for rights for farm workers. Al was a bridge, and what that means is that we all have a responsibility to reinforce the struggles and the bridges that he made, So as we all stand here, not just beneficiaries of his tree of wisdom, we're also beneficiaries of the bridges that he built across borders, across communities, across cities, across this state, and across this world. So I thank you, Desiree, the rest of the family, Lakla, and everybody that's here for giving me the time to share and to express solidarity for my various communities. And I say the struggle continues, and we can't stop, won't stop, and will not be stopped. Thank you.
And now it is our honor to hear from So Wing, defending, advancing, and strengthening the rights of vulnerable through her role as special counsel at Disability Rights California.
Hi, my name is Soing, but before I start, I'm just going to give respect to Al in the way that Chinese people do it. First of all, Al is here with us. He hears all of this, okay? Second, I wanted just to share the Al that I know. Al is a soft-spoken man, but completely fearless. Completely fearless. He didn't fear the cops in the US. He didn't fear the cops in Mexico. He feared no one. When he spoke truth, and he spoke against power. And I'll give you one small story. His heart is so big. He fights not for people here, but also people in Mexico. And I got to see this firsthand. I actually went to Mexico with him when he was protesting Lopez Obrador's losing the first time. He is the current president, but he actually lost prior. And we were in Zocalo, and there were people, police marching with guns left and right. And here's Al and his whole contingent saying all these things in Spanish that I didn't understand, but I copied anyway, and I asked Al later on what he said, and it was all bad words against the cops. So this man was fearless, and I got to see that. The side of Al that I also saw was a loving father. He loved Desiree so much. Desiree, I want to say this for you, because I know he would want me to say this for you, is that he was so proud of you. He saw so much of himself in you, and he saw in you the struggle and the fight. I can't say more than how much he loved you and how much he honored you, how much he was so proud of you all the time. I also want to share Al the man. He was always worried about not only his kids, but his grandkids. The house on 19th and T, he bought to make sure that it gets passed on to his kids and his grandkids. So he's always taking care of people outside of himself. So I just feel so honored to have known Al, to have known him as a human being. I mean, he's such a legend here as well, but he's such a soft-spoken, awesome, loving person. So I want to just be here to show him respect. He was actually here. There was a yellow butterfly. I don't know if people saw him, but he hears all of what we're saying right now, and he feels all of the love that we're feeling right now. So I want to thank everyone who's here to honor him, to honor his family, honor his children, honor the work that he's doing, and power to Al, and may he rest in peace. Thank you.
Our next speaker that I'm honored to introduce, Saida Islam, scholar, teacher, professor, leader in the Muslim community for immigrant and migrant rights and for women. Saida.
I never imagined standing up here without Al's physical presence, but we do feel his spirit, and we know that his spirit will never die, even though he is not here with us in physical form. I wanted to just talk about the first time I met Al at a Cesar Chavez rally. It was my first time speaking in front of what felt like over 1,000 people, and I go up, and I didn't know anyone, and he hands me the mic, but before he hands me the mic, he gives me this huge, big embrace and a hug and a huge smile. And from that day forward, literally, it was Al being a father figure, a grandpa to all of us, and always constantly handing me the mic with that big smile. He took me under his wing from that day forward and guided me. From his organizing work in Sacramento to nationwide to even in Mexico, I wondered, how does one man do it all? And yet whenever you talk to him, he'd give you his undivided attention and make you feel like your thoughts, your concerns, or the person that you are was the most important, most valid, and the same fiery spirit that he always had, but he still had such a big heart and that warmth to him. You know, when I moved to New York a little over a year ago to start working for Columbia University, he immediately contacted me and said, these are my contacts in New York on the ground, get to work. And that's just who Al was. He would rather spend his time and work with farm workers on the grounds and hear their stories and fight for them rather than dressing up in a fancy suit and taking pictures with politicians, where he very well could have done that, but he didn't care for that. His struggle and his fight was for the people. That is what amazed me the most about him, aside from the fact that, like I said, he never stopped working for the people, was his humility and his fearless attitude. He always stood on the side of truth no matter what. And it's funny because, you know, he never cared about who he would piss off or who he would get angry. It was always a I don't care attitude, because he's just like, I'm going to speak the truth no matter what. And that is something I learned from him, is that he never wavered in his truth. It was because of Al that I became an organizer around immigration reform and workers' rights. I started my career at the Council on American and Islamic Relations Care, but it was because of Al that he ignited that fire and passion in me to work around immigration reform and for the people. I even went to study labor movements, women's rights, immigration reform in my studies. I went on to teach at a college level on immigration reform, and so many things that Al taught me that I took with me in the classroom, in meetings, in academic, in political circles. Al's name was always rolling off of my tongue because I learned from the greatest. And on the ground, he always handed me the mic, like I said, because he always believed women's voices should be heard. That was something very new for me. As I move forward now with my academic journey, career, and activism, I will do it in Al Rojas' honor and memory, because he shaped me into the fighter that I am today. And one thing I will always remember, in Al words, never be a sellout. I'm going to say a few words in Spanish for our Spanish-speaking comrades that are with us from Mexico. Quería hablar hoy solamente ya sé que no tenemos mucho tiempo, pero Al era un gran amigo, un gran líder, pero también era alguien que me ayudó a ser la mujer que soy hoy. Si no fuera por Al, yo no pienso que yo estaría haciendo el trabajo que estoy haciendo hoy en Nueva York, trabajando en una universidad. Es por Al que yo me hice activista en cosas de reforma inmigratoria, los derechos civiles de trabajadores. Incluso he dedicado mis estudios a estudiando sobre movimientos laborales, estudiando sobre mujeres y reforma inmigratoria. Cuando estábamos en eventos siempre me pasaba el micrófono porque él quería que primero se oyeran las voces de mujeres luchadoras. Sigo adelante con mis estudios, mi carrera de historiadora y como luchadora. Lo haré en la memoria y honor de Al Rojas, porque gracias a ese gran hombre yo soy la luchadora que soy hoy y siempre. Y una cosa que nunca olvidaré serán las palabras de Al, que nunca nos venceremos. Quería pedirle a Bassem Alcara de CARE to come up here and just also say a few words to commemorate Al.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all. I'm joined here by Imam Mumtaz Qasmi, who serves as a spiritual leader of the Muslim community for over 30 years, right down the street at one of the oldest mosques in the country. And he has served as a spiritual guide for workers and farm workers for over 30 years. So I want to thank you for coming out. Also joined by Luis Magana and Frank Gonzalez, friends of Al Rojas, who welcomed us into the movement when we got involved back in 2004. And today, we celebrate. Today we remember a life of someone who lived a purpose-filled life, a life dedicated to serving others and uplifting others, giving their human dignity. On behalf of the Muslim community, CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, the Middle Eastern community, the Palestinian community, our deepest condolences to the Rojas family and all of you. In our tradition, we say we belong to the Lord, and to the Lord we shall return. Al, when I first moved here in 2004, you welcomed me into the movement. You ensured that the voice of the Muslim community and CARE was at every rally. You made us feel part of the family. You connected our struggles from here, from Mexico to the Middle East. You reminded people about Naji Defallah, who was a strike captain, a Muslim Yemeni American strike captain in the 1973 grape farmers strike. He spoke Arabic, English, and Spanish, and was integral not in only organizing the Yemeni community, but also transcending ethnic and linguistic barriers between workers. He served as a translator of the movement. In 1973, Naji Defallah became one of the martyrs of the movement, and when he was killed by a Kern County police officer during a protest. Al Rojas always reminded people that this is a joint struggle. This is a struggle that connects people from every background, every walk of life. Al Rojas, you forever connected our struggles and our communities. Every time there was an attack against our community, you called and offered your support. You stood by us during the darkest days post 9/11. We're gonna miss you, brother. Our community will never forget you. Si se puede. Salam alaikum.
We want to thank everyone for being here. We've come to the end of our program, and I want to thank CARE, Bassam, and Saida Islam, and everyone who spoke. Thank you very much. To line up, we're going to do a union clap to send my father off to another organizing mission.